Hello and welcome to today's webinar, Modernizing Medical Affairs with Laser AI, specifically safe, structured, scientifically sound SIUU or SIUU communications. During our live webinar, we experienced some minor technical difficulties at the beginning, hence why I am re-recording this intro for a seamless experience. Joining me today, I've got Dr. Kasia Hein-Peters, who is the founder of Abante Scientific, and who will briefly take us through the SIUU Communications framework and relevant industry insights. Following Kasia, we'll then have Artur Nowak, the co-founder and CTO of Evidence Prime. Evidence Prime, of course, being the company behind GradePro, a guideline development tool, and Laser AI, a systematic review tool. Artur, Kasia, and the audience, thank you very much for your time and for your participation. We hope you enjoy the webinar.
Yes, so thank you very much for the invitation to the webinar. My name is Kasia Hein-Peters. I am a physician and I have, after many years of experience in the pharmaceutical and medical device industry, I created my own company. I'm the founder of Abante Scientific, which is a consultancy in life sciences industry that is specifically focused on strategic guidance, medical affairs, market access aspects of launching new products. Today, I have a pleasure to discuss with you the new SIUU communication guidance by FDA. I think they are relatively new, have been around for a couple of months now. And I think many companies already are figuring out how these guidance are changing the communication. I also would like to say that whatever we discuss today should not be considered a legal or regulatory guidance. We are talking about SIUU communications and how AI can actually help with the proper creation of these communications only from the medical affairs perspective. And I will ask you, Shelby, to move slides because I don't think I can do it myself. I'm not sure. I see your screen and thank you very much for sharing. So again, it's a short reminder. I'm sure that everybody on this call have been going through SIUU guidance for some time already. But it is really, you know, when I look at it, it's really a culmination of about 15 years of sort of evolution of FDA's approach to off-label communication. And the journey started for many of us in 2009 with good reprint practices guidance, when we were able to, the limited pathway was established for all of us to distribute medical journal articles about unapproved uses. And then this guidance was updated a few times until in January, so-called final guidance, which in reality is not probably completely final because it's still under some discussions, but it did address certain concerns that we had in the industry about specifically a very vague definition of clinically relevant requirements. I actually think that the removal of clinically relevant requirements and putting more focus on scientific soundness actually clarified the issue for many of us, specifically for me. I think clinically relevant judgment is left to practicing physicians and other healthcare professionals who make this decision for every patient every day based on the best available evidence they have. So if we move forward, I just want to, with slides, I just want to quickly go through how the guidance actually changed. So there are, in my opinion, and based on the guidelines, there are three major changes that redefined our medical affairs communication. One is the expanded sources that we can use and presentation formats. So there is no more a requirement for only peer-reviewed and randomized clinical trials. I think it is more true to evidence-based medicine guidelines, when we can use basically the best available evidence in a given case, rather than some prescribed type of clinical trials. It's also what we can also use are clinical practice guidelines, different scientific medical reference texts, and also materials from independent clinical practice resources. And I think a big difference is that we can create our own presentations. They have to be specifically labeled as such, and sources that we use to create them have to be easily available. But I think this is the major difference from the original good reprint practice regulations. I think it's also very obvious that we can now use more channels. It's a digital-friendly approach, explicitly permitting distribution through different internet platforms, email, medical conference booths, obviously providing that appropriate guardrails are maintained. And the revised scientific standards and study acceptance. I think this is the third a very important aspect. And FDA just talks about scientifically sound studies that are allowed, early studies are allowed, and different types of studies are allowed. And for medical devices specifically, where, as we know, the type of studies that we can do in medical device space are sometimes a little bit more limited versus pharmaceuticals. Single arm studies are allowed with external controls, some non-interventional studies, well-designed bench or animal studies as well. So in principle, when I look at that, how I would summarize it is we are sort of going back to the evidence-based medicine, in which a physician looks at the best available evidence and makes clinically relevant decisions based on the best available scientific evidence. So if we move to the next slide, there are obviously some other considerations. So as always, these communications must be truthful, not misleading, and provide sufficient information for healthcare providers. They need to be able to assess the strengths and weaknesses, validity, clinical utility of the scientific information. There must be in the firm, especially if communications created by the company, very appropriate disclaimers, regulatory status of the product, and very transparent presentation of study limitations. And then source publications may remain accessible. Now, despite digital friendliness, if some platforms require a character space limitation, they may not be appropriate for SIUU Communications because of comprehensive disclosure and context requirements. So we have to be a little bit more cognizant about the type of platform that we use, and the type of the platform has to be suitable for the type of the communication. So it does, if you move forward to the next slide, I think what for me is the most important and changing how we sort of practice medical affairs in both pharmaceutical and medical device companies is our role is somewhat switching from mostly reactive sort of medical information type of communication about off-label uses to proactive scientific exchange. And I think that's important because it will help us, and it's already helping us, to create a more meaningful engagement with thought leaders and healthcare professional community. When we also, because of the ability to create our own communications, can actually have communications that is more targeted and therefore more relevant, maybe specific to some clinical context or specific patient populations. So But how to do it? I think that's the most important question, is how to do it properly, keeping the scientific soundness of communication. So if we move to the next slide, I think that we intuitively know what scientifically sound means, but how to design a process that sort of represents the scientific soundness in preparation of our communication. So I think that it does require more sophisticated evaluation, a process. We need to be able to assess study design quality, what was the methodological rigor and statistical validity of sources that we use. And I think that the balance must be between the compelling storytelling type of narrative with the requirements to provide balance and very comprehensive information, including all the limitations and uncertainties. So it also requires maybe more frequent updates of this scientific information. We need to be able to continuously monitor the field for new advances, for new relevant studies, maybe for new relevant clinical guidelines and meta-analysis. So some level of continuous review of the literature is necessary in this case, in my opinion. But it also, companies that do it well will gain a competitive advantage through enhanced relationships with healthcare professionals and thought leaders, and the ability to provide really a more robust clinical decision-making support. And I think we are faced with generally two situations, and if we can go to the next slide, we may share. So I think I have one more slide before that. How do we define scientific soundness? I think I tried to put some points here that I usually follow when for communications, scientific communications. And I think that first and foremost, we need to follow generally accepted scientific principles for study design and methodology. I think that's clear. We need to provide a clear description of the hypothesis that was stated and tested, and what were the results. We need to acknowledge all potential biases. Then ensure the reliability and validity of the data with protocols and statistical analysis, plans before conducting the analysis in the study, and then presenting all necessary information to healthcare professionals. And if we move to the next slide, we have basically sort of two situations here, two main scenarios in presenting SIUU Communications. The first one is if we have a company-sponsored study that we designed and conducted and have the results of the study. So this is our own study. And here, obviously, all the previous points that I mentioned are relevant. But we also have a situation where we need to conduct, if we want to present sort of the status of a certain evidence that's available out there, we may need to conduct a systematic literature review. And this is not a small task, as you all know. It takes enormous amount of time. We try to sometimes to speed it up a little bit by using different forms of large language models and other forms of AI. But here, I think there are some concerns about the security of it and compliance. So I think that in the second part of our webinar, we actually will focus more on the systematic literature review as it is a task, again, that creates a lot of workload in the companies. And also, we need to ensure that whatever methodologies, whatever systems we use, there is, again, they provide us with this availability to follow scientific soundness, and also are secure, compliant, and well integrated with everything else we do. So moving forward, I'd like to invite Artur, the founder of Evidence Prime, to talk about how systematic literature reviews can be conducted in the context of SIUU Communications better and safer with the use of AI.
Thank you so much, Kasia. I will share my slides now. That's the second part of the webinar, and I wanted to kind of continue with what we started already with Kasia's presentation, and provide you with a couple of direct quotes from the FDA guidance, and how I think AI can help with addressing this. So first of all, I think there are multiple mentions of something that I would call structured extraction of study details, limitations, and conflicting data. So throughout these quotes, you can probably see that first of all, there is a focus on providing the background, not only the study that we are interested in putting front and forward, but also potentially conflicting data from other studies. So this is, of course, nothing new if you consider systematic reviews, where we are interested in providing the broad overview, or maybe not only overview, but a broad look across all the evidence for a particular clinical question. And this is also reiterated here. So we are interested in other scientifically sound studies. We want to show limitations of the study that we are presenting. So all in all, we are simply looking into having a literature review, the study that we are kind of communicating first and foremost, but also the whole background. And just to give you some idea of how AI can help in making this reality, we now are developing a module that allows you to quickly search through the available evidence. So for instance, you can provide this kind of natural language query looking for off-label use of an existing medication. And then based on this, the tool will pull out some number, in this case 71 papers, that either very closely match your query, or maybe miss some of the requirements. Maybe it's not exactly the same population that we are interested in, but still provide you with some understanding of the literature that is out there. So this is all coming from a very extensive database of more than 240 million papers that, based on the studies that we performed internally and also published research, is much more comprehensive than PubMed and Embase brought together. So this already gives you some understanding of what's there, and then you can mark some of these studies as highly relevant using the stars that you have on the screen. You can, of course, also upload your own studies, so maybe the ones that are not yet published, or ones that you already know that you want to include in this communication. For every study that is in this list, you can see how it matches across different dimensions or different categories, complete with a quotation from the study abstract to make it easy for you to verify whether this match is actually a good one. And then when I think this gets really interesting is that you can then take this list of how we call them, seed studies. So studies that are very relevant to your query. And then you can use large language models to help you generate a PubMed query based on these papers. So this query is kind of guaranteed to match the papers that we already found, but then of course also to extend this to a large degree. In this case, you can see that we went from 71 to more than 1,800 studies. Of course, now what would typically happen is after we cast our net wide, we need to limit this number of results. The nature of this PubMed query is that it tries to include every possible abstract, but luckily this is also something where AI can help. It can help you get from this vast number of results to a more manageable number. But what I wanted to highlight here is that one of the requirements from FDA is that we want to have this balanced presentation, that we want to show the other data, the other studies. And I think that the proven way of doing this is to conduct some sort of a rapid review where we are actually going to PubMed, where we can document what type of query was run, what was the number of results, which results were included or excluded. So using an automated software like Laser enables you to do this quickly, but at the same time to have the full audit trial of everything that happened along the way. And in this next quotes from the FDA guidance, you can see that they reiterate the importance of evaluating the strengths and weaknesses of these studies, looking at study design methodology. Of course, documenting all of this, extracting this from not only your studies, but also, let's say, this background takes a lot of work, but luckily we also have a solution that helps here. So after you select the studies that are truly relevant, after you fetch the PDFs that associate them, we have a module that enables you to very quickly generate some suggestions for all these important fields. And what is also helpful is that you can also extract data from tables very easily by just selecting which tables you're interested in, what these tables contain, and linking more directly to this SIUU guidance. You can, for instance, address the requirement to include reported limitations or details on statistical methodology using AI models available as part of the tool. So here you can see, for instance, that we have some author-reported limitations. We have like a paragraph generated by AI, but this is also backed up with number of quotations, free quotations in this case, from the paper itself. So this link between what you write based on this draft generated by AI and what is in the paper, so the highlights are preserved. So in any case of, for instance, an audit, you can clearly show where all this information came from and that you were sticking to good science when, for instance, presenting the limitations of studies from, let's say, competition, for instance. So another, let's say, area that I think a lot of this FDA guidance is kind of touching on is the need for continuous surveillance and living monitoring. So you can see this through quotes like that the firms should take into account scientific knowledge both when initially preparing the communication and at the time of each dissemination. They further say that each time a firm considers disseminating an SIUU communication, they need to make sure whether it was not refuted, for example. And if the study was retracted by the publisher, FDA also recommends that the firm removes the SIUU communication. So all of this is really linked to the fact that once this work is finished, it's actually not finished because it never finishes. You still need to monitor the new studies as they come out, and whether new studies are not actually kind of refuting the findings from what was included in this original communication. But here again, LASER actually stands for Living Systematic Reviews. This is how this acronym is kind of built in the name. And the system enables you to repeat search periodically. After you have like a new number of results to screen, they will be automatically based on the likelihood of inclusion based on what you did before. You can update your projects with new studies. You can update the results. You can also monitor the retraction status of the study using the retraction watch database. So, so this all gives you tools to actually address these requirements. What we have here is a recent poster that that includes an external validation study of our AI for literature screening. So you can see here that this screening step, which is for selecting relevant references from, let's say, this potentially large number of search results, is characterized by very high sensitivity. For comparison, it's estimated that average human gets around 80 to 85% of sensitivity, with also high specificity, so we don't get like a lot of false positives, which means that you can truly keep up to date with your findings, but by delegating a lot of this work to AI. So the result is, for instance, a constantly updated Prisma diagram that shows how many references were initially found and how many were screened and included or excluded. This is really the gold standard for systematic reviews, which are in themselves gold standard for evidence synthesis. So in our opinion, this is also something that will pass the requirements for the SIUU communication for sure. And for every decision, for every step that happens as part of this project, you will have a full audit trail with information on who made a decision, who included or excluded something. And also we are now adding a text editor that enables you to quickly sum up the study results with help of AI and also inclusion of relevant data points. So thanks so much, and we'll be now switching to this discussion. So we'll be looking for the questions from the audience.
We do have a number of questions, and I do know there is sort of some questions between yourselves. Kasia, I know you also attended DIA, and if you have any insights from that, that would also be really great. But let's first jump into the questions from the chat. The first one is, how do you ensure AI is unbiased and scientifically sound? And I'm assuming that's specifically related to laser AI.
Yeah, so I will be happy to take this one. So of course, this is really the very essence of what we are doing as a company, because the AI coming from big labs, it's very difficult to kind of surpass them in terms of capabilities. But what is our task is to validate this AI, to build this as to kind of incorporate this as part of the literature workflow. So we are building our internal validation data sets. We are also validating this on many publicly available data sets to make sure that both these requirements are met so that indeed the results that we get are unbiased and scientifically sound. So you may know about many examples of let's say, unsuccessful application of AI. Screening papers is not very dissimilar to screening CVs as part of the interview process, and there was a widely publicized failure from Amazon in a couple of years back, where their system that was designed to help with screening candidates' CVs had a very strong racial bias, for instance, which was in fact reflection of what was in the training data. Here we are basically dealing with a very similar challenge, that our work is really to define training and validation data sets that are very well, let's say, constructed in terms of kind of avoiding this bias and being randomized. This work really never ends. We are now at the point of also making sure that we reflect what is in non-English scientific literature, which of course also exists, but is very often missing from these validation data sets. But yeah, we are making our best to make sure it works.
Great. The next question: how customizable is the data extraction?
Yeah, so I will answer this one as well. So it's extremely configurable, and to the extent that we, as the company, provide a number of templates, let's say, for you to use, so you can actually have something to start with. We say that we want to have batteries included. But just to give you some picture of the level of flexibility, this tool is used both by people doing studies in toxicology or environmental health, where very often you have in vitro or in vivo data in animal studies, and also, of course, in applications such as clinical practice guidelines. So all these different types of evidence and different uses are covered by the tool.
Great. I think the next is not necessarily a question, more just a statement. Kasia, if you want to add anything more, great. I feel we need a clear explanation in the industry as to what scientifically sound means. And I think that largely speaks on what you mentioned already.
Yeah. Yes, and it's interesting because I attended the DIA conference last week, and there was one specific session on SIUU Communications, and this was a discussion between panelists. So on the panel we had a medical affairs professional from a pharmaceutical company, we had a lawyer, and we had a person who used to work at FDA, was at that time is at the moment a consultant. And I think that there was a general consensus that with studies that we present and conclusions that we draw, we have to first look at what the study was meant to prove. What was the hypothesis? What was the methodology? What the study actually showed? And with all the limitations of the study population and methodology and the conclusions. And I think if we really look deeply into study populations, methodologies, and what they were meant to prove, I think that's the starting point to me for scientific soundness. And I know, Artur, you are a scientist yourself. So I'm curious, when you think about scientific soundness, how would you define it? So in addition to kind of what we already discussed, is there anything else?
Yeah, so I really liked your take on kind of comparing this to what happens in clinical practice guidelines, for instance, where we are interested in best available evidence, because this is really how the clinicians make decisions, right? They very often cannot afford to just not make a decision because there is no RCT. And I think something similar applies here. If we are talking about off-label use, we may very often face a situation, for instance, of an orphan disease. And in such situations, I think it's very often unethical to really say we cannot make a decision because there is no RCT, because very likely there will be never an RCT. So in this sense, we need to kind of walk down this evidence pyramid and look at other types of studies. So yeah, I really like this take that we simply need to apply the same criteria that we are applying when conducting clinical practice guidelines and in clinical decision making in general. And here, even from organizations such as Great Working Group, which is known for very high standards, there is also now guidance on how to, for instance, use expert consensus or expert generated evidence, because sometimes this is the only evidence that we have.
Yeah. And I think that one of the comments during the session at DIA last week was that we need to use the best available evidence. And it actually takes us to the evidence-based medicine pyramid, because sometimes a single arm study is the best available evidence. Sometimes, you know, cohort-controlled study is the best evidence. It's not always a randomized placebo-controlled big clinical trial.
Oh, great. I think, yeah, let's move on to the next question then. Can you search for studies within laser? This also connects to another question we asked outside of the that was asked outside of the platform, which basically I can't exactly remember the wording for that question, but do we connect to search databases, something like PubMed as well?
Yeah, so so this is a new functionality that is coming in the upcoming version. So we, as you probably kind of saw in these slides, we have two ways of searching. So we have some sort of a scoping search that looks across many databases. Here I also see another question in the Q&A session about the databases that are involved in the search tool. So here we are leveraging some publicly available databases such as OpenAlex, for instance, that indexes more than 240 million papers. But then for a repeatable searching, we also have this, let's say, more traditional integration with PubMed, where you just have a search query in PubMed syntax, and then you can query PubMed directly, or Medline through PubMed directly from the platform. And we will be also working on integrating more databases like this.
Great. What do we need to know when it comes to using tools safely? What specific terms should we keep our eyes on?
Yeah, so I think that this is a question to both of us to some degree. I think that this is something that we partly try to answer with this generation of search strategies based on the papers that you identify as how we call them seed studies. So these are highly relevant papers that potentially show a wide spectrum of what you can expect. And this helps you find the good terms. So they are not necessarily driven by the paper a single paper, let's say, but they represent the diversity of what you can potentially find. So these terms are, let's say, more unbiased in this sense. But of course, this potentially also relates to the methodology itself. I mean, how we define this, as I call this, background. So how we define the other studies, other signals that should be also included in the communication. Because this is something that will not be done by the tool itself. This is really a decision that we need to make. I believe that guidance here will be probably evolving, as Kasia said. Probably it's not final guidance, and some additional information on how widely we need to really search, and or on the opposite, how narrow we can be when presenting the results. This will be still defined. But I don't know, Kasia, if you have any thoughts here.
So I think that to me it depends on the question that we are trying to answer through the literature search or systematic literature review. And this question that we are trying to answer basically defines if it's a wider or more narrow, right? Now, with the company created communications, which are now allowed under the SIUU guidance, we can be, again, very targeted in our communications. So I think that but even if the question is relatively narrow, I think a really in-depth analysis of available literature is, in my opinion, necessary. I think that it's not only to make sure that what we provide to healthcare professionals is scientifically sound, but also in some way to prove, in case if we are asked, if we are questioned, if we are audited, to prove that we've done the right thing and we've selected information that are scientifically sound, right? So that we actually follow the scientific soundness in our approach, because it is, we are audited frequently. We are, we may be questioned. Our communication may be challenged. I mean, the FDA oversight doesn't stop. So we definitely need to be able also to prove it. I think from this perspective, what's very important in systems like laser AI is the ability to have this trail of how we did it, right? And then if we have a living review, we continuously use the same methodology, which actually makes our updates somehow, it's like a logical consequence of what we are already doing, how we already monitor the literature. And I think that's the aspect that I really like about laser AI, that the living reviews, because we really look at the literature all the time, right? And then at some point we need to decide, and that's our best judgment, when do we need to update our communication? Because maybe the science progressed so much that it's time for us to update our communication.
Sure.
That's why I think it's very important.
Yeah, so I think that's also an excellent question on, what is the trigger to refresh, previously distributed materials. So do you have any insight here, maybe based on what was discussed at the DEA conference?
This question was actually not discussed, and I was just thinking, how I did it in the past when we did everything manually. We at least updated our communications once a year. Now, if the field was moving fast, we tried to update it every 6 months. I think with the tools like laser AI, I think the trigger doesn't have to be time anymore. I think the trigger should be, again, our best judgment that the field already moved and that the science already progressed. And in some areas like oncology, for example, the science is moving very fast. In some other areas is not moving so fast. So, but that's why I think that the trigger is not the time anymore. The trigger is, again, our continuous follow-up of what's happening in the literature, and the trigger is based on our best judgment.
Great. So I see we have another question in the Q&A session. About the plans for inclusion of low and middle income countries in laser. So to some extent, this is of course already happening, and laser is also used in many cases to inform such research. But we are now expanding, let's say, this use case by also making sure that these validations and this work on AI applies to other languages as well, and potentially some languages that are mostly spoken in low and middle income countries. So this is something that we are doing, and I hope that we'll have some research to be shared in this area as well. So Kasia, I have yet another question. Maybe that's also something that may be interesting to the audience. So on one of my slides, I was kind of showing how we can use AI to comment on study limitations and also link this back. But let's be honest. I mean, study limitations, they study quality evaluation. This is really the hardest part of literature review, and this is where it takes years of training very often to do this properly. But then when we are communicating this as part of the messaging, how to really make it work in such a way that we are not overwhelming the audience with all the technical details.
Well, I actually think that sometimes it's probably unavoidable, because the communication has to be compliant, what means that we have to mention all the study limitations. And I think the way how some companies try to solve this problem is to create, for example, special microsites or special places on their websites where the SIUU communication lives, obviously separately from promotional content. And I think it is probably a website may be better suited than a set of slides sometimes to comment on the study limitations, because it just gives a little bit more space and doesn't feel like overwhelming number of slides that we have to look at. However, if this SIUU communication is presented at a conference on a booth, it could be a slide presentation, and in this case, we do need to include the study limitations. I think that's in some ways it's unavoidable because of compliance. But I would say thinking about the way to present and the digital format in which it is presented, I think some formats may be better suited than other. Right. And some formats may be not suited at all. I think, for example, X, formerly known as Twitter, is probably not the right place for SIUU communications, because it just has a limitation of space, obviously unless special accounts are created. But this limitation of space does not allow us to put all the important disclaimers in a communication like that. Absolutely. So everything has to be fit for purpose. I think the communication itself, the studies, but also the format. Yeah.
So we are getting to the end of our webinar, and we have one question that now appeared in the Q&A end section, and I feel that it really sums up very nicely what we discussed, but also kind of opens another number of questions for the future webinars. So the question is, what impact may be expected as far as distribution of medical affairs departments? So I guess in terms of staff, for instance. So will this all make medical information teams obsolete? Will it look differently in the future, and how? So, how this will really impact the medical affairs departments, in your opinion?
I think that we will need to upskill medical affairs employees in maybe a little better understanding of study methodology, statistics, how to draw conclusions, what conclusions are really scientifically sound from these studies. I think that's one. The second one is, I think with the broader use of AI-enabled tools, the upskilling also will include the better understanding of how AI can be used and what systems, how to validate different systems outside of your classical IT type of validation. I think that's important. And I know from my discussions with colleagues in the field that in some companies, AI is already everywhere, and other companies are actually afraid and do not use AI in their everyday work. What I believe will happen is that nobody in medical affairs will be really replaced by AI, but medical affairs that uses AI properly will replace the ones that don't. So I think the upskilling in these two areas is probably necessary. If this will replace medical information, it's actually a very interesting question, and I honestly don't know. I think we still will have to answer. So we still will have to be reactive and answer questions that come to us from healthcare professionals. So I don't see immediate elimination of medical information. I do believe, though, that some of the content that we were distributing reactively, we can now distribute proactively. And I think we need to choose, what is it, how we want to benefit from SIUU guidance. That is really more like enabling, communication enabling guidance rather than communication restricting guidelines. How do we benefit from that and kind of expand the role of medical affairs into more proactive communication? I don't know if I probably didn't answer the question, but I think that coming back, generally upskilling medical affairs teams is probably necessary at this stage.
Yeah, so I think that your answer to some degree kind of aligns with something that is cited very frequently in the context of AI replacing employees, which is this so-called Jevons paradox that sometimes when something gets cheaper, like coal, it actually doesn't wipe out the profit margins, but it kind of triggers more intense use, right? So in this case, it seems that there will be increased demand for medical affairs work. There will be also, as you said, some upscaling and more demand in terms of not the volume, but the depth of this work. Once AI makes it possible really to satisfy this demand, the demand will probably only increase. So there will be more work in the end, and probably
yes,
more.
And that's also
employment.
Why we will need AI to help us with that.
Yeah. Great. So thanks so much. I hand over to Shelby for a quick wrap up.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think that last question was really great, a lovely round-off question for us as well. Dr. Kasia Hein-Peters, I thank you so much for being with us today, and I'm so sorry for the confusion at the beginning, but thank you for being with us today. Thank you for sharing your insights, especially from DIA as well, and the information about the SIUU communication. Artur, thank you very much as well. To the audience, you guys as well, thank you for attending and sticking with us straight through. I'm going to share this slide. You can scan the QR code, you can email us, or you can visit our website if you're interested as well to learn more about Laser AI and schedule a free trial if you're so interested. And yes, thank you very much for attending, and I hope you have a lovely day or evening wherever you are in the world.